Peace, y'all. It is I, Energy Master, the Emma, and we have a tough talk ahead of us because today is the day where we talk about Jesus' descent into hell. And it isn't what you think at all. And this is exactly why we have this particular lecture series, because unless, of course, we clarify certain things, a lot of you are in for a hell of a time when you finally get ready to leave here. And this isn't some preach the gospel type of situation or a judgment situation, but it is a clarification situation. Now, I don't know if you knew it. I would hope if you're knee deep in lesson 4, but I would think you at least know that I wrote a book called The Leopard in the Mirror, Canticle of the Mutant Guardian, and this is the cover of that guy. And my daughter Kalia, who helped, see her name down there, who helped me do the painting that this is based on. But, so I healed a lot of stuff in the actual cover itself, a bunch of symbolism and stuff. From a distance, you just kind of see like a red, white, and blue cat and some other stuff. But there's a lot of little stuff strewn within it. A lot of symbolism, of which, because like what I would do, I would like make, lay down the foundational measurements and marks and stuff, and then I do some part, and I just give my daughter some pastels and just let her go to town, and then whatever she came up with, and I come back and I look at it and I say, okay, well, I'm gonna turn this into this and work with this and this, and we just went back and forth a couple times like that. And one of the things that I stuck in here, so we were just talking about Ethiopia and the Axum Stele. Well, you may notice, let me see if I can get the camera to be clear here. You may notice this spire here, or whatever, with 13 levels on it, and and it says Axum on it, and then next to it has that 23. So that is a reference to Jeremiah 13:23. Okay, and this is the Axum Stele that we talked about yesterday. So if you did not see lesson 4.1, you might want to go back and check that out. Okay, here you see this harp looking thing is called a lyra. And so this is based on Lyra. Okay, so we talked about that. So Vega is the brightest star in Lyra. Okay, and so remember Jeremiah 13:23 was the one that was talking about can a leopard change his spots, or can the Ethiopian change his skin? All right, and recall that, okay, so 23, remember that corresponded to Kof final. That letter Kof final, so 23rd in the 27 letter system. And that's where we got that word sufficient. Okay, and so you get this intersection between sufficiency, Allah, the palm, computation, calculator. And in Jeremiah 13:23, it's specifically talking about the common thread between the leopard spots and black people's skin. And so what that's telling you is that there's a correlation between computers and the way that the leopard gets his spots and the way that we get markings on our skin. And those are the two exact subject matters that Alan Turing dealt with. And one of the main central subjects that he worked on was pretty much AI. So computer intelligence and the Turing test, which is named after him. And if you're trying to look this up, it's Turing, Turing. His Turing test is what's used to this day to see how convincing a computer has to be before a human can't tell the difference between whether they talking to machine intelligence or if they're talking to a human. Okay, so all of these things were of interest way back, long ago during wartime. We're talking about world wars during these times. Okay, so they knew. And the leopard in the mirror, of course, is a reflection of the themes in Dante's Inferno, or better yet, overall, the Divine Comedy. Inferno being the first book of that, which describes the author Dante's descent into hell and the ascent toward the heavens to see the face of God. And, it's a very important piece of literature because it was a response to the type of Catholicism that had, dominated in the beginning as a result of, I believe it was, I want to say St. Augustine. Yeah. St. Augustine, whether it was Augustine of Hippo, I don't know right off top, but I do believe so. Now, and then so one of the important things associated with Augustine of Hippo and a couple other individuals is that you had people who were in Carthage, which is North Africa, who created the foundations of what came to be the Latin language. So you had these you had like Etruscan, and you had what's the other word I'm trying to think of with these languages? But basically these early with Vulgar Latin and these early precursors to the Romance languages. And the oldest known inscription of it I've talked about before, which is the Pristine am I saying that Prenest, excuse me. The Prenest fibula. And in that talk, I talked about how the fibula basically means pin, just like valve or walk. And the Ishango bone is the fibula of a baboon. So there was this theme of writing on these fibulas. And then that goes to show you it was like a more esoteric meaning to that. And unless I'm just like having glimpses from the future or something, I do believe I also, it might be on a later slide, but I'll go ahead and talk about it. But basically I decode what, I feel like I talked about it though, like how, the inscription on it, it does look to be talking about, a very specific geometric teaching, from, that I know from the Igbo History Museum, who I give a shout out to in this book, in Dr. Catherine's work and her daughter. And the significance here is that once again, the programming that went into what became the European church was established based on African foundations, which is why you have such a strong retaining of the indigenous knowledge in Ethiopian Orthodox Christianity. And this is why them other folks keep on attacking Ethiopia. And this is why them other folks keep on suppressing the books that are, beyond the 66 that you end up in the Protestant, because it is an initiation. It's basically to say that we're giving you this many books right now, so you can go ahead, understand that. Then we'll give you a few more books so that you can, once you've graduated, you can learn a little bit more and understand it in the right context. And then you come over here when you're the master, and then we'll give you this other stuff. So the key difference between all of these Bibles and the different levels that you go through with the various scriptures from each religion and so on and so forth is that the pantheon is presented differently. The hierarchy, the various beings, all of that stuff is given to you in, increments. And so as a result, with the Protestant Bible, you've basically got the baby form where there's generalizations. They don't really specify, when it comes to like the archangels, they don't specify. They just name something a devil. They basically in the version most of they just lump Lucifer, Satan, every name you could think of into just one being. And like when you lose those different distinctions, you mix things up. And for instance, so the whole purpose of the Quran is to clarify everything. And there's no such thing as a fallen angel. Angels can't fall because they don't have free will. What you have instead is, and this is what Satan actually is that he was a jinn who, through, his austerities, his righteous behavior, whatever else, he was elevated to a level akin to the angels. And because he had free will, when the situation came where Allah was saying to bow down to Adam and whatever else, he refused. And so instead of him, what they actually represented was him coming into flesh form. He refused to do so and instead became a king of the shadows. Okay, and you'll find if you look at the African stories, it fills in a lot of these gaps that you end up with in the simplified European form, because that was the form that we created to give them folks, because they were babies. They were new on the planet. We've been around for millions of years. They're relatively new. The blonde hair, blue eyed phenotype is only about 6,000 years old. Okay, so they're the babies on the planet. They've got a new set of, concerns. They don't have Akaraka because they don't have the computer on their skin, like I just described. They don't have the marking, so they don't know one marking from another on their hand, so they don't know their destiny. This was a new experience that was being created there. And anyway, so without that, they were getting the basic form. But what ends up happening is they then turn around and they assume everybody else's form is wrong. So they go around, conquering, enslaving, converting, and all of that. When what you're supposed to be doing is learning the science behind everybody's stuff so that you can get clarification and learn the keys to verification. So to bring it back around to the 19 code, this was your verification system. If you hadn't been through this, remember the 19 angels were guardians of the Sakar, which came to be, interpreted as hell. But what it is, I guess I might as well go ahead and get into this. Okay, so the other purpose of the 13, the Axum Stellar, remember I kind of made a joke yesterday about how you are from the cloud, the Nephilim. That joke about being from the heavens, it wasn't entirely a joke. Okay, so I was wondering when I would get into a conversation about this, and I'm actually having deja vu about this, so I probably foreseeing this. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the 12 heavens and the hidden 13th, and then you're going to see, then I'm going to show you where this is more or less in a couple of different sources, including the Bible. So, yeah. Okay, so I'm not going to tell you how to have an OBE yet, because part of the purpose of me doing this course right now is to make sure you have the clear understanding, because these are the guardians. And what happens is, if you try to access certain things, if you try to engage with certain things before you've had the clarified understanding, in order to not be consumed by the trappings of the ego, this stuff can mess you up. And that's pretty much our security feature, because this is pretty much the access to the control panel for reality. And I'm not saying that in a speculative way. I'm telling you straight up, as somebody who has healed his own kidneys, as somebody who has helped others heal their own bodies, as somebody who has trained under masters and witnessed everything you can imagine, from exorcisms to just you name it. It's real, and it is very misunderstood. And it's that lack of clarity that we're here to correct, because even the technology, just like I told you what was going on in Jeremiah 13:23, we've got a situation where you have secret military programs, you've got rich people, corporations, people messing with forces that I don't even want to say that they don't fully understand. I'll say that they understand exactly what they're messing with, but they don't care. And there is hope for you. There's beyond hope for you, but it does require you to have clarity. Because if it's jumbled, like, it's just like, it might be a psalm somewhere where it says, like, the sun shines just the same on the wicked and the righteous, just as the rain falls on both the wicked and the righteous. So that goes hand in hand with that saying where they're like, guns don't kill people. People kill people. People who don't use guns for the right reason kill people, is basically what they say. And that's essentially what scripture is. That's essentially what all of this stuff we've been talking about is. Because in the right hands, you can free humanity and elevate humanity and expand what's possible for us, and, you know, take some of this hurt out of the world. And on the other end, you can make atomic bombs. And that's what them other folks decided to do. We wasn't making atomic bombs. We couldn't even drink from the water fountain we wanted to. So these folks, why they got this conflict and they raising all this hell over in the Middle East, them folks know I told you about what Iran is on. I told you what they talking about over there, and what they saying, the messages they sending to black people. And they ain't even saying it on some like rise up and betray your government stuff. They just saying straight up. They're like, all right, them folks selling you out to fake Israel. Over there, they selling you. There's nothing wrong with actual Jews. There's nothing wrong with actual Israel as it's defined in its original sense or whatever. But then you have a bunch of players out there who are taking advantage of your ignorance to make it seem like they on a righteous mission. You got Trump out here making memes of him as Jesus, and then his boy from military or whatever. I just saw something my grandma was watching where he was comparing the press to the Pharisees or whatever. It was like these folks sick, man. I was like, so unless we correct this stuff, you gonna be in for some hell. You gonna see it on earth before you see it anywhere else. All right. So anyways, let's keep up the momentum. All right. So descent into hell. So Dante, Jesus. All right. So what's really going on there? So I went through a great bit of trouble to clarify what the Sakar is, which brings us to a conversation about the halls of Amenti. So let me be careful how I say this because you know how some of y'all are. All right, so I'm gonna just say straight up, just so I can be intentionally controversial, but I'll clarify. The Matrix is real. Hopefully, if you have been watching long enough, you know the Matrix comes from the word womb. It means womb. And the womb of the earth, the spiritual realm, is called the Alamul. Okay? Alamul. Spirit plane. Okay? And what a matrix is pretty much a bracket, an organization of numbers, values that preserve specific relationships. So it's not enough to just have the ingredients that make a person. You have to organize them in a particular order, in particular amounts, and so on and so forth. So you can look at the what the earth is and the way that it's designed as being a record of what those specific positions are. And so this is the root of what alchemy is. This is why it is associated with your root chakra, your chemical body, if you will, your red ray body. And remember, red was attached to those two. So the two words. So Ethiopia, one of the definitions they give is related to red brown. And so this was the significance of the horn. I called him the elk man. So this guy up here, I called him an elk because he's got these elk-like horns. Well, the word elk also means red brown, so it means the same thing as Ethiopian. So essentially what you're looking at here, remember I told you about the four living beings that came to Earth. So this one would be man. It represents man. This would be beast in the east. This would be avians. And then this would be animals in general. Okay, so whatever this thing was that I managed to, intuit, it's talking about this. All right, so anyways, okay, so this red, this concept, so it's not Jew, it's a U. And the irony is, yeah, that's exactly what that looks like. It says like U or Y-E-W. But this is actually a semantic because this is Greek. And it actually says geo. The root of geometry, gematria, earth. So the measures of the earth, the measures of the cube, all of that is part of the system. And then within that cube is where we talk about ordinala. Within the cube is the womb. The idea of the tetrahedron inside the cube. And then I told you that if you draw a tetrahedron inside a cube, a dual tetrahedron inside a cube. Essentially, what you're drawing is a icosahedron, which represents waters. So this is what's meant by living waters. So that's going to be relevant in just a moment. Living waters. So understanding what is meant by living waters that flow out of Jerusalem. Okay. All right, we cooking. All right. So there, in the Matrix films, they talk about something called the construct. And so the construct on the Matrix film is the all white space that they used as a loading program, basically to be able to generate objects that you could take into the Matrix. And so so they would meet up there, and if they wanted to get all the weapons they needed, they would meet up in the all white place, the construct, and then they would they would jack into the Matrix with the stuff that they made. So when we talk about the construct, and then this is something that Darius J. Wright gets into pretty extensively, that's whose workshop I took in order to learn how to do this. And once again, I'm not going to tell you how to do that just yet. That's going to be another series, but I'm going to just tell you about what's going on over there and what it is, why it's there, and so on and so forth. So this is a creation. So there's no doubt as to this thing is created. But the part that is kind of misunderstood is that this place is created by souls just like us. Because your souls are fragments of the oneness of God in the first place, they basically just function as, like, I guess you would probably, in the simplistic, simplified version, you would kind of look at it as angels, because the difference between angels, like I said earlier, and jinn is that they don't have free will. So it's basically like you've got orders where, okay, so you've got angels. So Orisha are essentially just like angels in that they just exercise the will of Chukwu, who is the equivalent of, Supreme God. Is just the name that particular tribe uses for that same thing. The monad, if you will. Okay, the arithmos. All right, so then you have those exalted jinn and the exalted humans. The like in the case of Iblis, was an exalted jinn, and he just happened to quote unquote fall because he rebelled. And then you have ascended masters. And so ascended masters are, people who are born men and then work their way up to that, their level, their status. These are initiates. So that's what Enoch is when he's taken up into the heavens. His name basically means initiate. So when I was talking about the fish earlier in the other talk, like all of that stuff is embedded in what I'm discussing right here. Okay, and so this place is made up of 12 heavens. And like I explained in one of the earlier videos as well, when you're talking about a matrix, however many levels there are, there's always the beyond one. So the 13th is the one beyond. So when we talk about Jesus as the 13th man, or we talk about Allah as the 13th man over on our side of things, or whatever, what we're saying is that's what serves as the container or the central principle that holds all the rest together. Of the 12 heavens, Earth is considered the first. Now, a lot of people look at it as not necessarily the reverse, but that basically they see it from, okay, the 12th had to be created first, and then it gave rise to the 11th, and then everything worked its way down until it got to us. So it's like a distilling process. And so from that perspective, the core idea that the overall system was trying to work toward in the first place is what Earth is. And because there's no time before you get here, we're the only heaven that experiences it like this, because it's made specifically for the type of experience we're having here. Because we're the only ones that experience time like that, we're technically the first. So you can look at it as all the other heavens were only information. It was living information. But until you had solid forms, solid stable forms, incorporated forms, and a framework for life and death, there was no need for a form to the other heavens. So this is why in African spirituality it's understood that the spirit is an extension of the physical. So the knowledge of the monad, of the one God, has to manifest itself through the agents in the physical world, and of those, all angels and whoever else were made to bow to man, because that's who we are. We are the hands of God. We are the physical manifestation, and the ones who filter the information and organize it and all of that. Of course, naturally, the problem with that becomes that we can also be our own prisoners, our own prison guards, by creating systems too rigid and structures too complicated and stuff like that. So that's just kind of one of the drawbacks, but it's all part of the game, part of the development. And so, anyways, these 13 realms. So first, of course, it's Earth. You've been here long enough to know what it's like to be here. The second heaven is the galactic realm. And when you talk about aliens, alien races and all of that, you're talking about the second heaven. And there's an interdimensional aspect to that may very well, there's a big conversation happening, and I've been reviewing the information just to kind of see what aligns where some folks may be confused, doing what I do. And it is a conversation that at least some part of what happens with the UAP phenomenon is related to the jinn. And so there's several alignments that do suggest it. Once again, they have free will, just like us. So it's not black and white. This is good, that is bad. But one interesting thing that comes out of that is that Islam, and we have to distinguish Islam, the religion, from Islam, the teaching of peace. Because at its root, Islam equals Jerusalem. It's supposed to be the teaching of peace. We call it the foundation of peace. But foundation for us is also included in the definition of knowledge, which is the foundation for all existence. And knowledge is symbolic of the Asiatic black man. So we are the symbol of the teaching of peace. Why do I keep wanting to say peace? Because we went to see Super Mario Galaxy movie recently. All right. And so, and remember, Islam is mathematics. So Jerusalem is supposed to be the teachings of mathematics. Remember I told you that the Greeks, they had that saying, there's something, matter of fact, I want you to see that. I don't ever want you to just have lip service when it comes to this stuff. Google pi and Greek gematria. God is always a geometer. God always measures the earth. You got to knowledge the wisdom to produce the understanding. Okay, so here it is. Okay, so as you can see, the Greek for this term, for this phrase, God is always a geometer. There's other ways to say it. So basically the same thing. Sufficient is Allah is really, God is a computer for the most part, for me. So each letter, so each word in here is digits of pi. So 3.14159 2. How are they counting this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 2. Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay, 2 and 6. Okay, and one thing that I noticed long time ago, which is partly what led me on this path in the first place, that everything that I'm doing, is because I noticed that in reverse, there's Z I O N, which is Zion in reverse. Okay. So understanding, if you understand the noise, Zion will be your understanding. And you remember understand. So peace is the highest elevation of understanding. It is supreme understanding for the benefit of the whole. And remember, he who overcomes the burden of love by understanding that love and understanding are one and not two separate qualities resides in paradise, thus being the people of the right hand. Now, something fascinating that I also learned earlier is that in the Quran, it's at Surah 66, verse 6, where they explain that angels only follow the will of Allah. They only obey the will of Allah. So this is telling you that what they're describing in Revelation is not related to fallen angels, because angels can't fall. You are talking about something, another force, and in fact, that's one of the things that we talked about in Darius's workshop, where the ones who did the actions that you hear about, like the Nephilim and mixing and blah blah blah, those were actually beings those were galactic beings. So jinn, aliens, all of that stuff is wrapped up into, one particular category of beings, exalted beings who chose to use this stuff as 10%ers to enslave the 85, and we are the counter to that, the 5%ers who know it and teach it and are here to clarify it. That's who we actually are. When you have knowledge of self, that's what you're taking on. You're saying, okay, you got people who have the knowledge just like we do, people who are exalted to a righteous state, but they're using it to enslave the people. They talk about how you hear it with both alien stories and with jinn stories, where they give humans this technology and they give humans this knowledge and stuff, so that they can basically manipulate them and destroy them and take their place and usurp them and whatever else. And so you got people who get their hands on this knowledge and then turn it into atomic bombs. That's what we've been talking about this whole time. Okay, and so when the Nephilim would die, their spirits would become demons, according to, the basic version of the Bible. Well, the word demon itself had nothing to do with necessarily good or evil, the same way that Satan didn't originally. But it dealt with a guardian spirit slash spirit double. So we're very familiar with that concept. So with respect to humans, so remember, the entire kingdom is within you. The entire construct is inside of you. So when we're talking about what jinn really are, we're not, especially the part where it's talking about, it says Allah gives you a jinn double. It's called a Kareem. Is what they call it in there. And when at the end of your life, he talks with the Korean. The Korean tells you tells everything you did, and so if you try to blame things that you did on your Korean, then ain't nobody gonna be trying to hear that. That's basically the concept of the chi, for the most part. And so, the main problem that you have in the East with clarity around that subject matter is that you need the African systems. You need that Ethiopia. This is why Muhammad sent his followers to go stay with the king of Ethiopia, with the Negus. Because if you don't know the entire hierarchy, who's who, what does what job, you end up lumping things into the same category and you misunderstand it, and it's easier for you to be deceived because you have only one spirit that you should be conversing with, and that's your spirit. Okay, and so essentially you have the equivalent of a jinn, which makes up your emotional body, and by you having discipline and training said jinn, because remember we talked about the concept of the serpent who, given enough time and wisdom, ascends to become a dragon. He can fly, and it's got sometimes they have him with wings, sometimes he can't, but he can fly and all this stuff. So that just basically represents getting the knowledge to go along with the wisdom, and then therefore you're able to produce understanding, which is the mental picture that allows you to see things for what they are, not what they seem to be. Okay, and so when you talk about seraphim, that word comes from serpent. And so essentially you're given this image of this class of angels, which is associated with the eighth heaven. This is where you get the concept of the winged serpent. And then they're made of fire. Okay, so you're already hearing a lot of so it's words from fire. From the tetrahedron. And that's how that's the thing I showed you. That's how that was made. It was by throwing the serpent into the lake of fire, throwing it into the A's inside of this, and then, understanding the steps to go through. But anyway, so as far as the seraphim go, you've got charges. All right. So this is basically what it's pointing to. In your body, you have certain charges, certain operations in your body that happen automatically. And we've talked about this, how if you had to be consciously responsible for beating your own heart, you would die. So those are basically the angels, the stuff that do all of the involuntary stuff that you don't have to think about. Those are the quote unquote angels within you. Those are the orishas. So in other words, those are your ancestors. Those are what you get from your ancestor that's informing the way that your DNA unfolds. That's what it is. Okay, but the concept of Iblis and the Shaitan having free will, refusing to bow, this is the ego. So basically, it's the part of you that you can take control of. And the question becomes, are you going to use your free will in a way that is aligned with the will of Allah, which is arm, leg, arm, head. All the math is contained within you. You are the computer. You are the storage for all of this information. Are you going to understand yourself so that you can control your actions? Are you going to understand your body? Like, I like to think about one of the things we used to always kind of focus on in martial arts was that the idea wasn't to learn how to do that just so you could go and fight somebody else or hurt somebody else. It was to understand your body and their body enough to where you know when you do and don't need to use higher levels of force. Because like they'll tell you in the hood all the time, it's like people usually get shot by scared niggas. Like dudes that can't think of any other options, so they just go straight to shooting. Whereas a martial artist knows how to control themselves and control the direction of a fight well enough to where he's like, oh, okay, I don't really necessarily need to kill this dude in order to resolve the situation. A simple arm bar, or maybe I have to break a finger or something, but at the very least, you know, people get to keep their lives, right? So that's self-discipline. So you have these faculties because you need them to survive in this world, but at the same time, it all comes down to what you choose to do with their free will. And so at the end of the day, when it comes to 5%ers, that group of beings, you have us who call ourselves the 5%ers, and we'll just go ahead and call it the gods and earths. I don't like using that in talks like these because unless you actually know the nuance of why we're called it, but I would think like by now you should understand it based on my talks. But you got those, you got the Muslims. We are not Muslims, but there are Muslims that are 5%. And then you have Muslim sons, which is basically Shriners. Without Jack Warner being a Shriner, you wouldn't have gotten the Matrix movie. We'll just go ahead and say that. Muslim sons. Okay, so Muslim sons are the white people who learn from us and then teach theirs. It's not our responsibility to teach white people how to live right, but you will have ones who study with us so that they can go back and then teach other white people in the language and the methods that they understand. Okay. Now, the key difference between these two groups is that these are the ones that understand the truth of Jiva is Shiva. Basically, that's not the words they use for it, but it's the same concept. The Muslims still see Allah as something separate from themselves. So they're still in that level of growth. In NOI, it is understood that the black man is God. They know the exact same things we do, but they still have an outward presentation that's similar to religious Islam in the East, where Allah is seen as something distant. Now, in the East, mind you, the vast majority of these people, they are basically, you know, Zagros Mountains, they basically the same thing as they're Caucasians for the most part. Not necessarily from the Caucasus, but like that same, you know, pool of people who were bottlenecked up there near Zagros. That's them. So yes, okay, it makes perfect sense for them over there to be Muslim. It makes perfect sense because they know who God is. In fact, that's what Iran keeps making these videos about. Because they know who we are. The black people over here in exile. who are in captivity. They know who we are. The problem is we don't know who we are. And so that's who the gods and earths are, the ones who understand, like, oh, okay, so I'm not saying I'm a replacement for God. I understand the concept of me being a fractal of God, me being one of those sparks off of the the logos, like I've been explaining. All right, so let's get back into this construct and the descent and all of this good stuff. And that's what you came for. You've been seeing this thing about emerald tablets of Thoth, the Atlantean. It was translated relatively recent, within the past like 100 years or so, by a fella. So it's not what you see in the emerald tablets of Thoth, the Atlantean is not necessarily the original. The original tablet that we're talking about, it has an Arabic name, and it's quite shorter. And then you've got these, what's his name? Balanis, I'm going to say his name was, who said he found, this certain information. Balanis, yeah, is his name. And, but as far as the story that most people associate with Thoth and the tablets and Atlantis and the halls of Amenti, all that good stuff, it was a guy that translated that. But that said, there's a lot of truth in that book. Like things that I didn't fully understand. Like when I only understood it intellectually, having read the book, it was kind of like, okay, well, take it with a grain of salt, show and prove. Let me see what, But after actually, doing this stuff, it works exactly like how he described. Okay, so I'm not going to go into what each of the heavens is, per se. That would be too, because that's not really the point of why I'm telling you this in the first place. But what I will say is that the 13th, and Darius associates this with something that's called the original serpent. And so now we kind of understand what the serpent is in terms of the original vibration and all of that good stuff. Well, the descent, which I'm going to read to you, various sources, biblical sources, so on and so forth. I'm going to show you where Atlantis is in the Bible. I'm going to show you where halls of Amenti is being referred to, and then why it is. It's if you don't know, you don't see it. I'll just put it that way. But the key thing is, I want to point out that Thoth mentions, he talks about the halls of Amenti deep within the earth, pointing your attention toward the center of the earth, not out somewhere out in the skies, because you're not going to find it. And you have something that's there called the dweller, that's at the center of all of this. And you see, I have Zechariah. Remember yesterday we said when you added up the number of books in each version of the Bible, the Ethiopian Catholic and the Protestant, it added up to the gematria for Zechariah, meaning to remember. And to remember is to put the pieces of the body back together, to repent. Pent is 5, and 5-fold form is arm, leg, arm, head. So it's all about the system that we put in place. Remember what? Well, like I said before, we have these regular cycles of these disasters where the sun ends up wiping out the grid, and we've put all of our information on the internet and all of that. We don't have CDs anymore. You just stream all your music. Electricity gets knocked out by these solar events. People don't have their teachings. They don't have their knowledge. They don't have their records. And there's some possibility that in certain types of events, if our consciousness is in fact tied frequentially to our atmosphere and the activity of the earth, we got electricity, we got plasma moving through our system. If that's the case, we lose the signal, and what happens is you end up with a period of forgetting. So people just forget who they are. So we keep on resetting. So whenever you hear them talk about a reset, a global reset, that's essentially what's happening. Where the data has become so corrupted, and we're demonstrating that the data has been corrupted because we're going to holy wars and we're doing all kind of crazy stuff with the technology. Whenever it gets like that, the earth resets. And we call that the flood. Okay, and so after that energy wipe, the whole thing starts right over. So just like on the Matrix, where after the machine war thing or whatever happens, Neo has an agreement with the architect and the oracle, where a certain number of people are saved, blah blah blah, and get to start over the Matrix and all that good stuff. All right, so they plug all of that into that story. It's not exactly like that, but that's the best way you can Hollywood that thing and get the symbols out there in an entertaining way. Okay, so in Zechariah, it mentions Atzel. I told you about that, how Atlantis is actually Atzelan, and the people of Atzel were the Atzelentu. So that's where we get Atlantis. All right, and do I want to do that first, or do I want to do Jesus in Ephesians? Let me do. So we did talk about Thoth. So let's get that out of the way first. All right. So in the Emerald Tablets, particularly Tablet 5, Thoth describes the dweller of Unal as a supreme master of wisdom from a higher cycle who guided Atlantis before its fall. The dweller appeared in ancient Atlantis to bring light, built a great temple of light out of ether, which is Akash, and commanded Thoth to become a keeper of records and wisdom. Okay? So in other words, the Thoth represents the system that was designed to preserve the knowledge within the earth itself. Okay? You even have some crazy stuff out there talking about he's actually an AI that went rogue. And there's some stuff that points to something like that. But anyway, so the origin of the dweller, because remember, dweller, cloud, Beit El, the house of God. We're really talking about the dweller, the God that dwells within, the Lord of the earth, the one who rules the body, the son of the earth. That's you. You the son of man. That's it. Anyway, so not earthborn, but a master from a cycle beyond us, serving as a son of a cycle. So remember, that's 4D. We talked about this. The Lord of the earth in Atlantis' day, a master of wisdom who showed the path of light, built a massive temple using ether and the power of Italan. So that's where we get that. So Italan is actually Atsulan. Separate from the 10 kingdoms of the children of men. So we talked about the 10 kingdoms. The dweller commanded Thoth to drink of all wisdom and become a keeper of records to preserve knowledge for the future. That's a reference to the Nomo. So Nomo, it means cause to drink. So that's a reference to learning from the Akash itself, and from the primordial waters, from which things emerge. Okay, and then the Nomo symbol is the thing that teaches you how things come into existence, how massless waves become matter, become particles. Okay, the dweller is who remains. The dweller is Shisha, the vibration that stays behind after everything is dissolved. So after the reset, there is a lingering frequency that allows you to continue to access this information, and that is the 7.83 hertz that the earth emits in the form of the Schumann resonance. So this is scientifically verified. Whether they realize that's what it is or not, who knows? All right, the dweller is portrayed as a guardian of light who told Thoth to go forth, preserve records, and hold the light until it could grow again among people. Remember, the breakdown I gave you of Thoth as the dual sun, the two suns, the twin suns, by that evolution of the letters. I believe I did that in the introduction, or maybe I did that in the mimetic arc video, but somewhere I did talk about this. Okay, so that covers what Thoth said. So you got all that stuff. You got the Atzel and you got the Dweller and all of that. Let's go on to Zechariah. Okay, so you probably understand this one way, but I'm gonna break it down for you. How far I want to go back with it? Because we need to go at least through. Don't want to go first 9. Yeah, I think we need the first 9 for this. Okay, so it says, "Behold, the day Yahweh cometh, and thy spoil shall be divided in the midst of thee." So just for kicks, let's see what the word being used for spoil actually is. So shalal, your prey, your plunder, your spoil, your booty. So they're about to split your booty, which is ironic because the first thing that develops for you as a cell is your anus. So your anus and your mouth separate from each other, and then it creates the tube that leads from, between the two of those, and that eventually turns into your digestive system. So that's interesting. It's a play on words right there. So anyway, for I will gather all nations. Let's see what it's saying for nations. So nations, Goi, all nations, all peoples, swarms. So the sense of massing. Okay, so basically, see, what you see is what you get with that word. Okay, so you will gather them all against Jerusalem to battle. So basically what it's saying is you're going to bring up the knowledge from all of these different places, and then you're going to put them up against the teaching of peace, which is pretty much mathematics. Okay, and just to give some context, the association with pi that I showed you with regard to design and whatever else, pi is the relationship of the circumference of a circle to its diameter. And so that's something that keeps on coming up in our talks, is the circle and the diameter. So remember I told you I was shown this original landmass, Gondwana, who was separated across the middle by a black river. Okay, so that's essentially what it's dealing with right there. Okay, so pi, so Zion. All right, so learning the math of how the earth got to how it is. All right, and then to battle. So let's make sure that we understand. So milkama, fighting battle. It is what you see is what you get with that one. Nothing special there. And the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, and the women ravished, and half of the city shall go forth unto captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. So it is going down. Then shall Yahweh go forth and fight against those nations, as when he fought in the day of battle. So Yahweh, remember, we're talking about the teaching of peace is going up against all this other stuff, and you're basically describing the results of not having the correct mathematical verifiable alignment, because this person thinks that it's saying this person thinks it's saying that, and now everybody's going to war and they raping each other, women, and killing each other, which is what we see happening today. Yahweh, Yad He Vov He, the one that exists. So the true and living is what this comes from. It's the one that exists. So if I take this thing here and I do one of these to divide it into 4, that's called a Yoa, which maps the movement of the sun and the movement of spirits in and out of the spiritual realm. So below the line, so this line is called the Kalunga line. Above the line is the land of the living. We go from birth to maturity to death. Under here is the process by which we go through the spirit realm and prepare for conception into another body. And then this is at the womb time. And then you're born. So this is called Kala in the east. This is called I always forget this one. And you know, so it's the same as a word in Arabic too. That's very similar to it. I can't remember, but it means maturity. And then you got Luvemba over his death, and then Musoni, which is the moment of conception. I don't know why I can't think of it right now. Just have these brain farts sometimes. So Jerusalem. So it says, so go forth and fight against those nations as when he fought in the day of battle. And this usage of battle is different from the other one. So this is Karab. And it means hostile encounter. So specifically an encounter. So before the days of encounter. Okay, and his feet shall stand in that day upon, and then the usage of day is interesting too, because it always has something to do with being high and whatever else. So keep that in mind with Sakar and other stuff we talked about. So the mount and the east, when it comes to Kala is also time. The Mount of Olives, illuminating oil, which is before Jerusalem, the teaching. On the east, when they use east, let's see, they're using Kadam and Kadama. So in the beginning, something ancient. The forepart, the beginning, antiquity. So in other words, the teaching of peace from the beginning. That's the description that's given for Islam in the 120 lessons. And the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst, so it's divided in the middle, just like that. Let's see, thereof toward the east and toward the west, and there shall be a very great valley, and half of the mountain shall remove toward the north, and half of it toward the south. So basically, we're talking about this shape right here, which is already forming a cross. So you already kind of see the themes developing here. And ye shall flee to the valley of the mountain. So you go to the Kalunga line. You go to, for the valley of the mountain shall reach unto Atsul. So they're spelling it like this, but that's, you see it now. So Atsul. Okay, and it means proximity, or he has reserved. So it's a spot that is reserved. A place near Jerusalem, site presently unknown. So they don't even know if it's an actual place. And then they're using the Aleph here, so Aleph Zadi or whatever. So whereas, remember I told you how Etzel, with the Etz, was the tree, but then we had this secret esoteric one that instead uses the Aleph. So Etzel would be the tree of God, the tree of El, the tree of Elu, the God tree. All right, the connection between heaven and earth. All right. And then it says, shall flee like as ye fled from before the earthquake. And then this earthquake, it just generally means vibration, quaking, trembling, even confused noise is played into that. The babble. All right. And in the days of Uzziah, who was king of Yehuda. So Yehuda, remember the hand, the spirit realm. And let's see what Uzziah's name means. So he is the strength. My strength is Jehovah. The strength of Yah. That's a Zikanga. So it just so happens that Igwe, aka Igwe Kala, whose name, so this cluster right here, or at least the GW, can be it's pronounced like in Kwele Kole. So this becomes an O in a lot of African languages. So Iowe. So it's basically saying the same thing. Iowe. Okay. So let's talk about the same thing. So Iowe. So the strength of excuse me. Strength of Chukwu, so the supreme God. Igwe, the god of the sky and lightning, kind of like Zeus in their pantheon, but not really like their gods. It's just a force. Um, he is the Ikanga, the right hand, the strength of the supreme. And then in Sumerian, we use this D in order to denote that they are an Anu, which it can mean either sky or ring or heaven or God. And so the Dikinga. This is why the Yoa is also called the Dikinga Congogram in the Congo. Okay. All right. Isaiah, Yehuda, and Yahweh, my Elohim, my judge, my accuser. So he's saying that the sky god, quote unquote, Igwe, is the group spirit of mankind. And then because we only do things from the earth or whatever, it's just all the information that's coming from all directions that is focusing in at the center, at the womb of Allah. And then that becomes the projection of the construct that we use. So when it comes to the 12 heavens and whatever else, the 13th is actually in the center of the earth. It's a portal that leads you to anywhere in the construct. The stars, constellations, all of those are frequencies when you're on the other side. And so they're basically like lights in the waters of the firmament. Like you'll hear talk about this, but then you access what you're doing is you're projecting when you're on the other side. You're taking this frequency information, this sound information, and you're projecting it as a visual interface. So you are the creator of the virtual reality that represents the information that you're accessing during that time. And so if you want to access all the information, you have to go to the center, but you're not going to the center of the earth outside of yourself. You're actually going to your own center because it is one and the same. If you go to your own center, you will essentially be dealing with information that is a replica, the exact copy of all the information out there. And that is the Akashic Records, aka the Halls of Amenti. Okay, so we got that clear. Just want to finish this out. I told you I'd take you through 9. Okay, Elohim shall come and all the saints with thee. And the way they use saints in the English version of this is honestly stupidity, because that same word also means angel. It means sanctuary. It just means a couple of things, and it's not as simple as just being saint. It means something consecrated. It means it's been properly aligned. When you've properly aligned yourself, you are that. You are Elohim. All right, and it shall come to pass in that day, so in that heat, that those warm hours, that the light, illumination that happened is the lightning, the light of the luminaries, the sun, moon, and star. So the sun, moon, and star, lightning, all of that is included in this definition. Shall not be clear. The word for clear is actually being valuable, prized, costly, influential. We got clarity in there, so it's not going to be clear. So the sun, moon, and star will not be clear. It's the contents of the Ark of the Covenant. You will not understand what this thing means at first, is what they're saying. You will not understand how this thing translates to this thing once you build it out. Okay, and it says nor dark. And so the word being used for dark is congealed, thickened. So it's the exact thing I've been talking about, where you had the unclear Akash, which was the jumble, the babble, and then you have to organize it into a physical form. So this is what's telling you that the scripture was not a physical written form. These were not physical places, but it congeals through us. Like by it filtering through our body, we in turn develop the consciousness that allows us to write this stuff down. Okay, so with a bridge. But it shall be one day, or one day, which shall be known to Yahweh, not day nor night. So it will neither be the clear version, nor will it be the mixed version. It's neither the light nor the hollow, the space. So the word they're using, this isn't it. So the word that they're using for night here is actually Layla, and so Layla is or Layl, that's the angel of night, of darkness. She's the womb. It's the Alamur. So she's the one that teaches the fetus the Torah while they're in the womb, according to the Lord. And so it's telling you that we're talking about within the earth, and then we're talking about the stuff above the earth, the sun, moon, star. But it's saying that it'll be neither one. It's the midpoint between all of those. But it shall come to pass that at evening time, so Luvemba, so death, it shall be light. Okay? And so that's the west there. Okay, so on the west side of this cosmogram in death. So this is that same thing I was talking about yesterday with respect to how death was introduced to us as a means to return to the to where we came from, but be able to do it during the time that you're alive instead of you waiting till it's all over out here. Okay. Now, and it shall be in that day the living waters. So we talked about the living waters shall go out. Interference parents shall go out from the from Jerusalem, which was the teaching of peace. Half of them toward the former sea, and half of them toward the hinder sea. In summer and in winter shall it be. So summer was Kala, so that's the east. Winter is Luvemba, that's the west. So we're talking about from life to death. So the flow, remember I was telling you before, that flow between the air, the invisible, and then the earth, the solid. So the flow between those two is what we call life. And Yahweh shall be king over all the earth. Yehovah shall be, so Melech, royal. King is often related to source. Shall be king over all the earth. Eretz, land, earth, tribal region, earth inhabitants, the soil, space or distance of a country. To be firm, so all firmament. So anything that is actually terrestrial, that is what Yahweh. So in other words, those constellations mean absolutely nothing to a being that does not live on this planet, because they are not attuned to those specific configurations of stars and stuff. It's useless to them. Okay. And there shall be one Yahweh, and his name one. Echad. This word can also mean 11th. So in other words, in a circle of 10. So saying in a circle of 10. Which is the number of avatars. He shall be the first, and he shall be the 11th, which is the fish. Matsaya, Avatar, the fish who warns about the flood. So this is who warns Noah in his story. Noah's name is Nun, spelled Nun, Ak, which is the light body that emerges. So this whole concept of the dweller creating a temple of light from the ether, all of that is talking about the same thing. This is what's happening in your DNA. So the spinning ship that the Nomo come down to earth in, that's the vortex of you. This DNA double helix, it locks in icosahedral water molecules and whatever else. So that whole arrangement inside of you is what projects you into this space. That's what all of that is talking about. It's trying to get you to remember that. Now, I know we're going kind of long, but again, this is one of those important ones I want to go ahead and knock out. But let's go ahead and finish up with the descent of Jesus into Hades. They call it Hades in that case because it was written by Greeks. But Ephesians 4 is the place where we want to focus because that was the earliest mention of this. So this is the earliest writings of Christianity, we're going back to around like 60, 62 AD or CE. And the stuff that's closest to the time that, Jesus actually died is probably going to be the more accurate. And you can see as you move away from that time, the story gets more elaborate and more controlling and just out whatever. But the earliest version of this is in Ephesians in the letters of Paul. Okay, and I'm gonna read that through. I need at least up to 9. So you see how both of those first 9. So in both Zechariah and in Ephesians, those first 9 are important. So 99 names of Allah. I therefore am the prisoner of the Lord. I'm pretty sure. See, we don't have breakdowns in the King James version. This is Greek, but I'm pretty sure that doesn't necessarily mean like in jail, because they used to use the word like slave and stuff in a way that was just like you're a servant of the Lord. But you can see how that could be easily twisted in English. All right. So anyway, beseech you that ye walk worthy of the vocation wherewith you are called. So this is the walking in the destiny that is assigned to you, what is assigned in your akaraka, with all lowliness and meekness, with long suffering, forbearing one another in love. Love is understanding, y'all. Endeavoring to keep the unity of the spirit in the bond of peace. So once again, talking about Jerusalem and the Akash, unified, the common information we all shared experience of the spirit. There's one body and one spirit, even as ye are called in one hope of your calling. So your calling is part of a single larger calling. One Lord, one faith, one baptism. I want to make sure you understand what the word baptism actually comes from, because you might be surprised with that. Let's see. Okay, so ancient Greek, from baptizo, I dip in liquid. Let's keep going. Bapto, to dip. Immerse. Let's see, to dive, dip, to submerge, to dye, to color. So that's interesting. So baptism, so to be colored. To be like you dipped in paint. So it's not just simply being dipped in water. It's like you being dipped in paint. Anointed means it attaches to the word meaning to paint. Fish also is associated with the word meaning to paint, pigment. If you don't believe that, if you don't believe me, don't take my word for it. They don't seem to want to bring it up for you. They stalling today. Because they know. They're like, man, this man searching for this word and that word back to back. What is he up to? Let's see if where's that breakdown? So that Pesk. Okay, there it is. All right, so Pesk from Pixchetti, coming from Pake to paint, mark, color, stitch, embroider, hue, cut out. All of that is involved in that. So that's where fish gets its name. So from being painted, colored. Fascinating, right? Okay, so anyways, let's keep going. All right, one God and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in you all. So this same God is in us, through us, around us. This is a so that same information of the ether is in all things. No disagreement with what's happening in like Odinala and the African system. But unto every one of us is given grace according to the measure of the gift of Christ. So that anointing. And then, do we even understand what grace is? You know, they like to associate this with prana and chi and all that good stuff, but apparently it means praise or elevation. And then remember what we said about praise with respect to Muhammad's name and of course value. So that word that all right, so cognate. So it's actually all right, so check this out. So praise here is from Proto-West Germanic lobe. Lube, which is love. Huh. So that's kind of a different that's kind of a different kind of trajectory when you talk about praising something versus loving it. You're talking about the same thing here. Now it also has desire attached. And then I don't know if you knew this, but desire comes from a word meaning, so it's from desidere. Check this out. Decidus is from desidere, meaning from the stars. So desire is from the stars. So love from the stars. And remember, star is the child, the understanding. So you can see how somebody could be confused with like just the stars in the sky, but then we talking about you. We talking about the constellation. We talking about the mool. So mool, you know how those L's and those R's get interchanged. So mool in Sumerian is 3 of the on symbol. So that same symbol that means God here, you got the 3, which is mool, which means constellation or gathering of the stars. So it's the children. And we got 3 of them. It's Ish in Sumerian. Written like that. And so this whole thing we've been talking about this whole time, the Eshim. Shin. Okay. That's you. The gathering of 3 stars. Your body. So the solar plexus, the heart, and the throat. So that's what makes up you right now. The limbs are extensions of you. That's your spirit. And the head is the old sun. So all the charges associated with what you were before you got here, the memory, all that associated with the head. It all comes back together. Okay. So that body of Christ. So you all got it. But you do probably have to be dipped. We don't have this black skin arbitrarily. Like all y'all came about for different reasons. But when Homo sapien popped up on this planet, and many of the types of hominids that were already here, they were black for a reason. It didn't have anything to do with race. It had everything to do with function. All right, and so wherefore he saith, when he ascended up on high, he led captivity captive, and gave gifts unto men. He made the concept of service serve. Now that he ascended, what is it but that he also descended first into the lower parts of the earth? Before his transfiguration, Jesus descends into hell. He ministers to them, and it comes back up. But it doesn't say that all of that in the original scripture. It says, now that he ascended, what is it but that he also descended first into the lower parts of the earth? He that descended is the same also that ascended up far above all heavens, that he might fill all things. there you have it. So in other words, instead of trying to go out there looking for something like, oh, I got to go out into the stars, I got to go out into all the various heavens and whatever else. If you go to the center and you realize that the center of the earth is the center of you, instead of you trying to have an outer body experience, you're trying to have an inner body dialogue with the plasma that is right at the center of your spine, so that you connect to those charges, the DNA that your ancestors gave you. You will actually access the ancestral plane, which is generated by your mind using the information that they gave you. So you have all the information from who they were, and this is stored in the form of light. This is the tower of light that the dweller is talking about here. Whenever you have holographic photography, it captures all the phase information. This is why you're able to turn that rainbow looking black strip of paper when you shine light on it, and it'll look like a 3D image. Remember I told you, so this guy right here, when you place it, so there's a YouTube, don't want to do it. I feel like I have to, so I can move on. I know it's adding extra time to stuff, but I feel like it's necessary since I brought it up. Let me see if I can find it. If you've never seen in my other talks where it was a long time ago, I did this video about how to, you had cell phone holograms, projectors that you could make by cutting out a CD jewel case, and then making like this like little upside down pyramid, and so I demonstrated in a little mini series I did. Let's see, hollow. Shouldn't nobody have my government name like that, so it should be easy to find. I just gotta remember which episode it was. Okay, so was it in the first or the second one? I know maybe in the beginning of the first one. Let's see. Hey, what's up, guys? This is Scabario. Last week, you may have seen all the buzz about y'all see me without my dreads, without my locks. Okay, so it's basically something like this made from a case, and you put it in the center of your phone. You had this little 4 images or whatever, and so when you put the joint, I'm gonna turn off the light so you can see it better. But when you so you create these holograms, and you can like walk around it and look at it. You'll be able to see it from 4 different angles. It's like a jellyfish thing. Let me see what else I had on it. Did I show the other? Okay, yeah, and I show you straight up. Yeah, so it's 4 pictures of a jellyfish that's generating it. Okay, so you got the general concept. And so likewise, what I had to do, and I actually put instructions for this in the book. So in the Leopard in the Mirror, I give you instructions for how to make this. You will have to invert the color of it to white. So it's like, you know how to invert color the way everything black turns white, everything white turns black, or whatever. But if you put that same thing in the center of this on your cell phone or whatever, it'll turn into one 3D version of this guy right here. So it was really like some Star Wars shit, like when they had the Princess Leia hologram in the beginning of the movie or whatever. Like that's what it felt like when I first saw this. I was like, oh my goodness, it's crazy. So all these come together: the beast, the avian, the animal, the man. These are the 4 living animals that are talked about in Ezekiel and associated with the tribes. All of that is this. And so when it says that he's 1, his number is 1, we're literally talking about the number 1, which is the Aleph, the Aleph, R-A, which we associated with Ani and Ina and Inani, in the earth, the womb, Odi, which means midnight, or just night, which is Layla. So all of it is confirmed right there. So that's what we're talking about. So we're talking about going into the other side so you can get the clarity before you come telling people what's up And on that note, we're going to wrap this one up, and we're going to continue to clarify. But now you somewhat understand what the construct is. Now you somewhat understand how this is embedded in scripture, and I think I will move on to some linguistic stuff in lesson 5. On that note, peace, y'all.